Growing up, I never could have imagined that my own mother would end up attacking me over money. But life has a way of unveiling the darkest sides of people, especially when it comes to family. I'm Sarah Mitchell, and this is the story of how my mother chose her new family over me, then came back demanding money when she found out about my success. The irony? She didn't just demand. She actually resorted to violence when I refused. Let me start from the beginning. My mother, Diana, had me when she was 20. My biological father was never in the picture. She told me they'd only dated for a couple of months before she got pregnant. She'd given him the choice to leave, and he took it without hesitation. According to her, their breakup had been so bitter that she decided against pursuing child support, and he hadn't offered any either. It was more convenient for both of them to never cross paths again. Thank God for my grandparents, George and Marie Graham. They were my mother's rock during those early years, supporting her while she finished her education and landed her first job. My mom dated occasionally when I was younger, but it wasn't until I was around 8 that she started seeing Rob Anderson. They'd worked together at some point, and after dating for almost 3 years, they got married. Rob and I had what you'd call a cordial relationship. We weren't particularly close, but we coexisted peacefully in the same house. 4 years into their marriage, my mother announced she was pregnant. Everyone was thrilled, including me. Looking back now, I should have seen the warning signs, but I was naive enough to believe that no matter what, my mother would always be there for me. After all, she'd struggled through so many hardships to raise me. Surely she wouldn't throw all that away? Even though we'd started growing apart after her marriage to Rob, and she'd become increasingly distant, I convinced myself it was just a phase. Things would get better, I thought. First signs of trouble. I tried to be supportive during her pregnancy, but she'd become irritable whenever I was around. So I started making myself scarce, thinking it would help. But apparently, I hadn't made myself invisible enough, because 6 months after she gave birth to the twins, Emily and Ethan, she and Rob sat me down for what they called a serious chat. "Sarah, we need to discuss something important," my mother began, her voice unnaturally calm. "With the twins now, we're finding it difficult to manage everyone in the house." I was 16 at the time. Rob cleared his throat and added, "It's becoming challenging to support such a large family on our current income." The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 web developers couldn't support a household of 5? We'd been living comfortably up until then. It was painfully obvious they were just looking for an excuse to push me out. The confrontation. Despite their transparent attempt to push me out, I desperately tried to find solutions. "I can get a part-time job," I suggested, my voice trembling slightly. "If money's really the issue, I could help." But my mother cut me off mid-sentence. Her words still echo in my mind to this day. "It's not just about money, Sarah. We need to save our resources for the kids who actually deserve it more." She wasn't even looking at me as she said it, her attention focused on the twins' baby monitor. The emphasis on "actually deserve it" felt like a knife to my heart. That was all I needed to hear. They hadn't even bothered to tell me where I should go. They just pushed me towards the door, counting on my pride to do the rest of their work for them. And they were right. I wasn't going to stick around where I clearly wasn't wanted. Moving to grandparents. I headed straight to my grandparents' house that day, my entire life packed into 2 hastily filled suitcases. When I told them what happened, my grandfather George's face turned red with anger, while my grandmother Marie quietly wiped away tears. They were furious with my mother, but chose to maintain contact for the twins' sake. Living with my grandparents wasn't a long-term solution. They were getting older, and I couldn't bear the thought of being a financial burden on them. At 16, I started working part-time at a local retail store while finishing high school. I'd occasionally see my mother and Rob when they visited with Emily and Ethan, but their interactions with me were coldly formal, like I was a distant acquaintance rather than family. "Oh, Sarah's still here," my mother would say whenever she saw me, as if my presence was an unexpected inconvenience. The worst part was seeing how much happier she seemed without me around. She was less irritable, more relaxed. It was like I'd been the source of all her stress, and removing me had solved everything. College years. When college time came around, I was completely on my own. While other freshmen had their parents helping them move into dorms, I relied on a couple of friends. The student loan process was another nightmare. My mother and Rob refused to co-sign, using their familiar excuse about saving resources for their kids. "We need to think about Emily and Ethan's future," Rob explained over the phone, his voice maddeningly reasonable. "They're our responsibility." Thankfully, my Uncle James Graham stepped in. "I'll co-sign," he told me. "Just promise me you won't default on the payments." His trust in me became my motivation to succeed. Throughout college, I worked multiple jobs while maintaining my grades. Every dollar I earned was carefully allocated between tuition, books, and living expenses. I had to watch other students enjoy their college experience while I juggled shifts at the campus cafeteria and a local bookstore. Graduation and early career. My graduation day was bittersweet. While my grandparents beamed with pride from their seats, the empty chairs where my mother and Rob should have been spoke volumes. Not even a congratulatory text message came from them. The years after graduation were tough. My entry-level marketing position barely covered rent, utilities, and loan payments. My apartment was tiny, my furniture all secondhand, and I counted every penny. But I was determined to make it work. "You're one of our most promising new hires," my first manager told me during my initial performance review. I threw myself into every project, volunteered for extra assignments, and slowly but surely began climbing the corporate ladder. Career success. Now at 33, I'm the vice president of marketing at the same company where I started. When I received the promotion 4 months ago, I wanted to keep it private. Success feels different when you fought for every inch of it alone. I did tell Uncle James, though. I owed him that much. "I'm so proud of you, Sarah," he said during our lunch meeting. "You've really made something of yourself." Little did I know that his well-intentioned pride would open the door to unwanted visitors from my past. The unexpected visit. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my home office when the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I found myself face to face with two people I hadn't seen in nearly 2 decades. My mother, Diana, and Rob. They looked older, more worn down. But my mother's eyes still held that same intensity I remembered from childhood. "Sarah," my mother said, attempting a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We need to talk." Against my better judgment, I let them in. Maybe some part of me still hoped for an apology, for some acknowledgement of the past. I couldn't have been more wrong. "We heard about your promotion," Rob began, settling uncomfortably on my living room couch. "Your Uncle James mentioned it at the family gathering." "Quite a surprise," my mother added, her eyes scanning my well-furnished home. "I'm surprised you didn't tell us yourself." I couldn't help but laugh. A short, bitter sound. "Really? We haven't spoken in 17 years. And you're surprised I didn't share my career news?" Instead of addressing the years of silence, they launched into their real agenda. They told me about their failed business venture, their mounting debts, and how the twins, Emily and Ethan, were approaching college age. My mother's voice took on that manipulative tone I remembered from childhood. "You could make it up to us," she suggested, as if I owed them something. "Help fund your siblings' education. After all, family should help family." The confrontation escalates. "Make it up to you?" The words felt like acid in my mouth. Make up for what exactly? For you kicking me out at 16? For refusing to help with my college expenses because you were saving resources for the twins? My mother's face hardened. We didn't kick you out, Sarah. We were trying to do what was best for everyone. You're twisting things. Am I? I stood up, anger finally breaking through years of carefully maintained composure. You told me the twins deserved it more. Those were your exact words, Mom. Or have you conveniently forgotten that too? The heated argument. You're being extremely ungrateful, Diana snapped, rising from her seat. I raised you alone for 8 years. I made sacrifices. Sacrifices you legally had to make as a parent, I interrupted. And the moment you had your new family, those sacrifices suddenly became too much. You didn't even wait until I was 18. Rob tried to intervene, his voice attempting to sound reasonable. Sarah, try to understand. The twins need. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't you dare talk about what the twins need. Where was this concern when I needed a cosigner for my student loans? When I was working 2 jobs through college? The ultimatum. If you don't help, my mother's voice turned threatening, you'll regret it. We're family whether you like it or not. I walked to my front door and opened it. No, we stopped being family the day you decided I was expendable. Get out of my house. You ungrateful little. Diana started towards me, but Rob held her back. You have exactly 30 seconds to leave before I call the police, I stated, my phone already in hand. And don't ever contact me again. The aftermath. After they left, I sank into my chair, hands shaking. Within hours, the emails started coming, long, guilt-tripping messages from my mother about everything she'd done for me since I was a baby. As if changing diapers 17 years ago entitled her to my money now. I finally responded to one. Everything you did for me was your legal obligation as a parent. You chose to have me. You also chose to abandon me when it became inconvenient. You don't get to play the mother card now that you need money. Her response was predictable. More accusations of ingratitude, more manipulation. I blocked her email, but like a persistent virus, she created new addresses to continue her harassment. The workplace incident. One morning, my office receptionist called. Ms. Mitchell, there's a woman here insisting she's your mother. She's refusing to leave. Thankfully, I was home that day, fighting off a cold. Put her on the phone, I instructed, my voice hard with determination. Sarah. My mother's voice came through, demanding as ever. We need to talk face to face. I'm not leaving until. Listen carefully. I cut her off, my voice ice cold. If you don't leave my workplace immediately, I will sue you for harassment. You won't be able to afford college for the twins or even basic necessities after I'm done. Is that clear? The final confrontation. A few days later, I came home from work to find Diana standing outside my door. The setting sun cast long shadows across my front yard, making the scene feel almost surreal. Mom, leave. Now, or I'm calling the police. I had my phone out, finger hovering over the emergency call button, when she suddenly lunged at me. The phone went flying as she tackled me to the ground, years of pent-up rage exploding in a flurry of hits and screams. This is all your fault, she shrieked, trying to strike me. Everything was perfect until you ruined it. Thanks to my regular gym workouts, I was stronger than her. I managed to defend myself until my neighbors, hearing the commotion, came running. They held her back while someone called the police. The aftermath. I pressed charges. Rob bailed her out, but from what my grandparents told me, he took the twins to his parents' house afterward. The incident was apparently the last straw for him too. She got into a fight with Rob when he confronted her about her behavior. My grandmother Marie informed me during our weekly call. Even we don't want to associate with her anymore. She's not the daughter I raised. I filed for a restraining order and started looking at houses in different neighborhoods. My mother's actions have shown me that sometimes the only way to deal with toxic family is to cut them off completely and move forward. I hope she gets help, but that's not my responsibility anymore. Epilogue. Sometimes I wonder about the twins, Emily and Ethan. They're 17 now, the same age I was when I had to learn to stand on my own feet. I hope they're doing okay with their father. But I've learned that you can't help people who see you as nothing more than a resource to be used. My mother made her choices, and now she has to live with them.